Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning 600 people who assaulted police officers? Fourth time. Can you do it?
I'm happy to. I condemn pedophilia,
Do you condemn Donald
neo-Nazism.
Trump for pardoning?
And I
January 6th? You won't do it.
Mehdi Hasan, widely known as one of the sharpest debaters today, went head-to-head with MAGA supporter Michael Knowles in a heated debate over Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election. The discussion took place at Dartmouth College, where both sides argued over Trump's actions, constitutional questions, and the results of the election. In this video, we'll go through some of the most powerful moments from that debate, and I'll share my own thoughts and reactions as we move through it. So let's get started and take a closer look at everything that happened.
Of not whether Trump upheld the Constitution with regards to January 6th, but did he uphold constitutional norms?
Great.
Is that for any one of us in particular?
Particularly you, Michael, but either of you could
I'd
go
love
at
to
it.
answer after Michael.
Sure,
Do
yeah.
2 minutes and 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure thing. Yes, he did. Again, I'm not convincing anyone that they should love the horn hat guy. That's not the basis on which you're voting this evening. But there is a great precedent for contested elections in the United States. In fact, that's what the 12th Amendment is about. We've had a number of contested elections. Obviously, 1860, the election of Lincoln, the Rutherford v. Hayes, which resulted in the Compromise of 1876. Bush v. Gore, Al Gore refused to concede for months after that, and there were some riotous events. So what occurred at the Capitol on January 6th was very unfortunate, though it's been much lied about. It's worth pointing out that the only person who was killed in political violence that day was a Trump supporter who was killed by a trigger-happy cop. There's also a special irony to Democrats complaining about January 6th as the worst day in the history of this or any republic, because not only was it not the worst political violence in American history, it wasn't the worst political violence of that year. It followed the little prosecuted BLM riots.
The claim that only a handful of people were prosecuted over the BLM riots is simply false. In reality, thousands of people were arrested, charged, and prosecuted. Doesn't it get tiring hearing this nonstop whataboutism from MAGA figures like Michael Knowles? Instead of addressing the issue that's actually being discussed, they constantly try to shift the conversation somewhere else, and after a while, it becomes really frustrating to sit through.
And where Kamala Harris and staffers for Joe Biden actually bailed the rioters out of jail. But there's a greater irony, which is that there have been 5 or 6, depending on how you score it, attacks on the Capitol in American history. Virtually all of them have been perpetrated by radical leftists, a Marxist Harvard professor, Harvardman, of course. But then one in 1971 was perpetrated by Bill Ayers of the Weather Underground. Bill Ayers, in whose living room Barack Obama launched his political career. So it's very unfortunate that took place on January 6th. It's unfortunate that there were questions about the 2020 election, questions which arose because the election rules were radically changed in the weeks and months before the election, in some cases unconstitutionally, as in the case of mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. It's also a bit strange that Nancy Pelosi took responsibility for not having sufficient security at the Capitol that day. She did that on camera. It was actually a film that her daughter made. You can easily go look it up. And it's very strange that some of the Capitol Police gave the leaders of the insurrection private tours of the Capitol, notably the aforementioned horn hat guy. But regardless, it's a great pity that it took place. I hope it doesn't take place again. And unfortunately, it's also not totally out of the norm for the United States, going back at least to the middle of the 19th century.
Before we get to Mehdi Hasan's response, there's something important that needs to be pointed out. Michael Knowles' entire argument comes down to saying, well, other bad things have happened too. He keeps insisting this wasn't the first time anything like this has happened, and then he quickly pivots to, what about BLM? It's the same whataboutism we hear all the time. Rather than dealing with the issue that's actually being discussed, the goal is to distract everyone by bringing up something completely unrelated. Imagine someone standing in court after robbing a bank and telling the judge, Your Honor, I know I robbed the bank, but plenty of other people have robbed banks too. Someone even robbed 10 banks, so why am I the one getting punished? No reasonable person would accept that excuse, yet this is the same type of argument MAGA supporters continue to make again and again. Whenever Donald Trump is criticized, they rarely respond to what he actually did. Instead, the answer is always, yeah, but what about something a Democrat did? When MAGA supporters attacked police officers, tried to overturn the election, and stormed the Capitol, the response immediately becomes, well, what about the other times people stormed the Capitol? It's nothing more than a distraction, it avoids the real issue being discussed, and it's an argument that simply doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
January 6th hadn't come up, and it was a big issue from Trump's end of his first term. Mike Pence, we talked about Mike Pence, who Michael's a fan of.
Why does Mike Pence keep coming up?
Because you're a fan of his, and he was the vice president who didn't endorse the president for another term because he said he made me do unconstitutional stuff. He wanted me to violate my constitution That's from Mike Pence's testimony. You want to dismiss it because you know there's comeback for it. You cite Al Gore. Al Gore never incited an insurrection. There is no precedent for January 6th. We were used to peaceful transfers of power. Richard Nixon agreed, even though he's probably robbed by JFK. Al Gore agreed, even though he's probably robbed by George W. Bush. Donald Trump actually lost, for sure. And he still didn't accept it and incited a riot. Michael says, Democrats thought it was the worst day in history. Do you know who said, bar none, it was the most horrifying day in American politics in my lifetime?
Mike Pence.
No.
You
Guess again. Guess again. It was Ben Shapiro on January the 7th. He said it was the most horrifying day that I witnessed in American politics. A noted Democrat.
But I always
Shapiro
disagree with that guy.
on January the 7th. So let's just deal with some facts here. The people who attacked the Capitol were not going on private tours. They were not just a horn hat guy. It was people like Daniel Rodriguez, who assaulted Michael Fanone, put him in a stroke, got 12 years in prison. The judge said he was an army of hate and violence. Donald Trump pardoned him. It was people like Andrew Paul Johnson, who was just sentenced to life in prison for sexually abusing 2 children in Florida. Donald Trump pardoned him for January the 6th. He pardoned a neo-Nazi called Bradley Tyler Dykes, who did a Sea Kyle salute as he attacked police officers. These are the people Trump pardoned. Michael has never condemned Trump for that. Harry Sisson asked Michael on his show earlier this year, would you condemn Donald Trump for doing that? And he wouldn't answer the question. He said, I'll never condemn Donald Trump. Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning neo-Nazis, domestic abusers, pedophiles?
Well, hold on. Was he one?
Do you condemn Trump for pardoning?
I'm just asking a clarifying question about that guy. Was he one of the neo-Nazis who was getting $3 million from the SPLC, or was he a different neo?
That's nothing more than a myth that Michael Knowles is trying to push. The claim completely falls apart when you actually look at the facts, and it's just another misleading talking point that doesn't stand up to any serious scrutiny.
I'm not Harry Sisson. I'll lose up my time. Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning neo-Nazis, violent criminals, people who assaulted 140 police officers on January the 6th?
One last real clarification.
You won't answer.
One last real clarification.
I'll ask you. Simple question. Do you support pardoning the 600 people who were charged with assaulting police officers?
Pardon them for
like Daniel
pedophilia?
He pardoned them for assaulting police.
All right.
You support that?
All right.
One time.
I oppose assaulting police.
Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning 600 people who assaulted police officers? 4th time. Can you do it?
I'm happy to. I condemn pedophilia,
Do you condemn Donald
neo-Nazism.
Trump for pardoning?
And I
condemn. You won't do it. You will.
Oh, wait, we have a debate format. We're going to stick to the debate format. We're not going to.
He doesn't want to stick to the debate.
We're going to stick to the debate format.
Answer the question.
I will have. I'm happy to answer on the substance if you like.
If you would like to, you just want me to respond however you
So obviously, Mehdi's being very, very dishonest. President Trump didn't pardon anybody for pedophilia or Nazism or whatever nonsense. If you'll allow me to finish. So what he pardoned them for is because there was a massive prosecution of thousands of people on January 6th that was politically motivated, that was disproportionate because the federal government.
Michael Knowles keeps claiming it's politically motivated simply because it involves his political hero, Donald Trump. But if someone tries to overturn an election, that's a political act on its own. The people who helped carry it out forced their way into the Capitol, committed crimes, and assaulted police officers, so they should be held accountable for those actions. There's nothing political about enforcing the law when people break it. Calling every prosecution political just because you don't like who is being investigated or charged doesn't change the facts, and that's the same argument Michael Knowles continues to repeat.
All of the leftist rioters who, unlike the January 6thers, killed dozens of people and it resulted in over $1 billion worth of property damage, let them off the hook and in fact raised money to bail them out of.
That claim is simply not true. More than 2,000 people were prosecuted for crimes connected to the BLM protests. Michael Knowles, along with many other MAGA commentators, continues repeating this talking point even though the facts don't back it up. They keep pushing the same misleading narrative over and over, hoping people will believe it without ever taking the time to look at the actual evidence.
Midwestern grannies who were not pedophiles or Nazis, but who were eccentric ladies who walked around. Who walked around the Capitol despite all of the lies suggesting the police officers were killed. If that was not true, the coroners proved that. So he recognized that there was disproportionate prosecution. The same goes for the pro-life grannies who were arrested by Joe Biden, who were imprisoned for praying at abortion clinics. President Trump pardoned them. Now, on the pardon power, there are lots of bad pardons that go on. Joe Biden took it to an egregious degree, but the pardon power is absolute. And if we're here to defend the Constitution, we would have to defend the plain words of Article 2, which say the president has the pardon power.
Okay. Thank you both. I appreciate the sentiments. We're going to keep interruptions to a minimum.
They didn't even give Mehdi Hasan a fair chance to respond to that point. Just imagine going through life where every time you do something wrong, your only defense is, yeah, but what about what someone else did? That's basically the mindset Michael Knowles keeps relying on. It's like a student getting caught talking in class, and when the teacher says, Jimmy, you were talking, he answers, yeah, but Bobby started talking first. No teacher is going to ignore what Jimmy did just because someone else was also talking. That's exactly what these arguments sound like. It takes real intellectual honesty to admit when the people on your own side were wrong. A reasonable response would be, yes, what happened that day was wrong. Donald Trump made serious mistakes, and while other bad events have happened at different times, we can talk about those separately. Looking at January 6th by itself, what happened was completely unacceptable. The people who stormed the Capitol committed crimes, assaulted police officers, and should have been held accountable under the law. Whatever happened during other protests doesn't erase those crimes or excuse that behavior. Instead of recognizing that reality, Michael Knowles keeps falling back on distractions instead of addressing the issue directly.